Hey, welcome to another Coffee HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever. Today I'm going to keep talking about judging, and this really follows on from my last video on kind of judging styles because it's something that is a consequence of some of the choices you can make about how you split up your judging team that I didn't really talk about in great detail in the last video. So I'll link it back to sort of what I was saying there as well. And really what I want to talk about is the importance of the head judge giving immediate and direct feedback to the fencers as part of your tournament system. And if they don't, it causes issues. And we'll talk about some of the issues that it does present. So what do I mean by this? So some tournaments you see, and the link back to the previous video is that this is particularly true if you've got the what I call the semaphore system back then. You know, the head judge will just say the score, right? They'll look around and they'll say 2 points red, 1 point blue, or whatever it happens to be, right? Whatever that score happens to be, with no explanation of what's going on, no explanation of why that was scored, no explanation of anything that sort of led to that scoring, or what was the scoring hit, and that kind of stuff. A much better way of presenting it would be to actually describe and then present feedback within it. So you could say something like, red attacked blue, that was parried by blue, then blue came in, that was parried by red, red then comes back with a hit to the head, but receives a blow to the hands in the same tempo from blue, therefore it is 2 points red, 1 point blue, right? What that's doing is that's telling them sort of what's kind of been scored and showing how you've kind of read back to it. Of course, it is harder because you need to remember and read back on what happens. But where it becomes particularly important is when there are actions that you see and that you don't score, right? Because they understand now what's gone on and what's happened to it. When something's come in and you say it's been parried, that's a good example, right? Because sometimes people think, oh, I definitely hit them. And you're like, no, we think that was a parry. They know that that's why you're calling what you did. You think that their first strike was parried. So they're at least aware of what was going on. It's even more important, and I touched upon this in a video from a long time ago, back when I first started doing Coffee HEMA, for hit quality, and saying things like, blue struck, but it was mostly parried. There was a little bit of flapping in the blade, but not sufficient to score. Then red comes back in with a cut to the head, right? You're telling them why that wasn't scored, or that it was too much of a tip, or that the thrust missed, and then there was no cutting action for whatever it happens to be, right? And the reason this is important is that you are essentially telling the fencers immediately, this is why you didn't score, and the inference from that is then, okay, what do you do next time if you want to score, right? Is it that you can't score through a parry in that way? Is it that you need to have more of a cutting action after your thrusting motion or whatever it happens to be? If you don't tell them that, there are two issues, and again, this is a justice and an order issue. The biggest issue from an order perspective is first of all, from a justice perspective, you're at least telling them why something is what it is, so they understand the decision, right? They might not agree with it, but they understand why you made the decision that you did. And that tends to lead to at least a better perception of justice, because it's not just, oh, they missed my hit, judges are shit. But actually, it's like, okay, fine, right, yeah, I think it was good, but this is why they don't think it's bad. It's good, so fine. This is what I need to do differently. But even more from an order perspective, what's important is that if you get fencers in that situation where they don't know what's going on, they don't know why they're not scoring, A, it gets them frustrated, which tends to kind of get adrenaline levels up, get kind of anger and force levels up. And B, the default, unfortunately, for a fencer who's finding that their hits aren't scored is to make them clearer. And what does make them clearer mean? Normally what it means is go hard, go bigger, make bigger, more obvious cutting actions. What does that lead to? That leads to higher force levels. So this kind of being able to read back the exchange and explain sort of all the actions and why they were or were not scored in the run up to it is much better for being able to make fencers able to adapt, make fencers understand what happened, and prevent this risk of kind of force levels sort of gradually going up. Depending on your judging system, you may or may not be able to do that. So the semaphore system essentially prevents the head judge from doing that. The semaphore system, if you remember, 4 side judges, they hold up a flag, the head judge counts the flags and decides based upon which flags are up, what the score is, the head judge has no knowledge of why each individual person is scoring what they did. So they're not actually able to read back the play in that regard. For systems where the head judge is the ultimate arbiter and every side judge, however many you have, is just providing them information, then the head judge is able to do that. They're able to say, okay, based upon this information, I think that was no quality because my side judge says there's no quality, and it was on their side. So they can read back the actions and they can say which ones are scored and which ones aren't scored. The more side judges you have, the harder that is because you kind of got to go on. You're not going to be having a conversation. You're not going to be going on kind of indications. If you've only got one side judge, you can normally have a 10-second conversation, understand exactly what happened, why they are or are not scoring something that you yourself may not have seen, and move forward from there. But yeah, the less power the head judge has over understanding what the scoring system is, the less ability they have to make this kind of call. So that is the other reason why I prefer the two-judge system, head judge and side judge, even over and above what I said last time, because it's the easiest to do this. The head judge, by and large, will understand the exchange already, because they need to, because that's part of their role. If there's any parts of the exchange they don't understand, normally you can have a relatively brief conversation with the side judge. It's things like, oh, I saw an action on that side. I couldn't see if it hit. You're not calling a hit. Is that because you're not sure or because you saw it definitely not hit, right? And that kind of stuff can lead to a much more descriptive kind of conversation that's provided back to the fencers. So in summary, try and make sure that as a head judge, you are telling your fencers why they are scoring what they scored. Try and make sure that they understand what they would need. From that description, they should be able to work out what they need to do differently next time to score, and try and make sure that what doesn't happen is they just default to getting harder and harder hitting, because that's obviously dangerous. And in my next video, I'm going to talk about, again, as a head judge, sort of having conversations with fencers to try and stop things before they become too extreme, even if they're not yet kind of over the force level or some other kind of issue that you want to address. Thanks for watching.